All right, we are going to call to orders at 7 o'clock our regular governing board meeting, September 22nd of 2020. All members are here. Ms. Frank is joining us telephonically, so let's stand for the pledge. And after the pledge, we'll have a moment of silence in honor of Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Thank you. Ms. Frank?
I move we adopt the agenda.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Oh, I think Dr. Zurbach, you're up.
Should I wait or not? No. Should I wait? Do you want me to wait, Dr. Finch? Or,
I think you could start.
Okay, good evening, President Ordway, members of the board, Dr. Finch. As I always begin, it is our pleasure to present to you our return to school report. It does seem, President Ordway, that we've come quite a long ways here. I think I was just talking to Jenna. It was either March 10th or March 17th that we started our COVID reports at that time. I believe we went into emergency session, Dr. Finch, on March 17th. And so we've now had here about 6 months of our COVID reports. And so now again, as we look to resume school, it is the return to school report. So we'll get started. Okay, we will begin this evening with one sunshine story that will be done by Jenna Moffitt. And then after that, we will do the return to school work team updates and then follow it with questions and answers. Jenna, take it away.
So this week's celebration is focused around the celebration of our new hires, a special education teacher. Isn't that so exciting? I know. Devin Kane is currently student teaching with DVUSD and is the first student teacher to sign a letter of intent with Deer Valley. Deer Valley Middle School has the fortune of adding Devin to their staff when he completes his prep program with NAU, which should be concluding this semester. Dr. Finch and Judy Williams from HR joined the Deer Valley Middle School administrative staff and special education department to welcome Devin to the team. You see the picture featured on the right shows Devin with the SPED team, the administration team, and his family came for the event.
Thank you, Jenna. Okay, and now for our return to school work team updates. We'll begin with return to school safely, and Mr. Migler.
President Ordway, members of the board, Dr. Finch. These are the metrics from the Maricopa County School dashboard and the same data that we've looked at previously. The last time we had shared some information, I said we thought there was some data that was suspect from one of our zip codes. I wanted to clarify that thanks to the folks at Maricopa County, they did respond to our inquiry regarding that. They said the data is accurate, and in fact, they further went on to state that they are suggesting that we don't look at one single report as a basis for making any determinations. They said it's important for us to look at the trend over time to see what the impact is. And we did have a slight increase. There was much discussion about that in the cases per 100,000 for the report. That was dated September 10th, but you can see that the September 17th report, it dipped back down even below the previous report to the 10th. I think it's important to note in the lower right corner that the report from last week or the September 17th report is through the period that included September 5th. That is the Saturday of Labor Day. So we are anticipating that there may be a slight increase in some of the report some of the data that will be reported this week, because it will include not only the Labor Day itself, but the days following Labor Day through the subsequent Saturday. I don't know that to be true. I don't have any reason to believe that, other than we did see some increase in activity from the last holiday, which was the 4th of July, previous to the most recent holiday of Memorial Day, or Labor Day, excuse me. I always get those two holidays mixed up. I apologize. Overall, the trend is downward, and if you look at it over time, you can see the steep decline in cases per 100,000, which follows closely. This is the data for our particular school district, but this data follows closely with the data for Maricopa County in general. We also have this data by zip code, and just in furtherance of the county's response to our inquiry, we actually have a zip code from this report that has 0 cases per 100,000 and a 0% positivity rate. Again, I don't think we should read too much into that, because there could be a very small sample size as related to this, although this is a fairly highly densely populated zip code in our district. But again, looking at one period of time is something that the Maricopa County officials caution us from looking at and making any decisions on.
Thank you, Mr. Miglerino. Okay, our next slide contains some important reminders, both for you as the board and then for anyone listening in, that we wanted to cover. First of all, the return to school operational plan, again, is on the website, and it's very simple, return to school. If you go there, there is a button link for the operational plan. We don't need to go there right now, but on that plan, per the board's request, we did provide some additional information regarding the cafeteria and also the specials that have been added to it. Also, I wanted to bring it to the attention of those listening that the face mask language in the return to school plan is directly from the letter that was sent home on Friday to the parents outlining the face mask requirements is in 100% alignment with what's on the website for the face mask requirements. And as we have indicated in the past, we do plan on taking a firm stance on the face mask requirement. As we have heard before from Dr. Sonnenschein and from our other public health experts, this has been identified as the number one mitigation strategy in our public school settings and really outside of those settings as well. And because of that, again, we do intend to be quite firm on that. The letter was firm. It indicated what would happen, that a parent would have 1 hour if there was a refusal to pick up his or her child, and that if that was not done, then there would be disciplinary action that would be administered, including a suspension, because it is that important for both our other students who are on campus and for our staff who are very much aware of this important mitigation strategy. Also, for our COVID-19 reporting procedures, just a reminder that on the Return to School website, there is a link for that has been up for many, many weeks. And so parents could go to that link to see that there is a data collection tool there that helps get the process going, as long or in addition to a notification to the campus nurse and the campus administrator. Also, as far as COVID-19 notification, again, this is a reminder that ADHS Emergency Measure 2020-03 defines what an outbreak is, and when there is an outbreak, there are mandates that a school must adhere to in terms of notification to all parents, staff, and students, outlining the current situation at the school and what measures will be taken to improve the safety at the school with respect to COVID-19. And so that is what parents can expect, I guess, if you will, in terms of if there would be notification for that. Again, with situations that are not fitting the definition of an outbreak, again, as indicated in ADHS 2020, those situations we would be notifying those who would be in close contact of someone that had a positive case of COVID-19, and then anyone else would be determined by the county, who would give us that consultation saying that this particular group or groups of folks would need to be notified as well as of an exposure, and perhaps maybe not just a close contact. And then the final bullet point that I wanted to bring your attention to is that this week we did transition our free, safe learning space to the home campuses. And so we have almost all of our campuses that are doing that this week, and they're doing a very fine job with that. And again, I would thank Community Ed and our 6 sites that were doing that prior to this week, as they provided much leadership and guidance to the campuses for this particular part. Okay, I have 2 slides here just showing you some of the photos of the good work that's being done on the campuses. Many of us on Cabinet have been able to visit our campus sites over the past week and checking out the good work that's being done. And so here you see various photos from the sites. I think there's constitutions in here. We got Lenny. I believe Dr. Galligan was there today who took that photo. I think Park is in there, and also Hillcrest, seeing some of the measures that the schools are taking. This slide as well, you can see it starts off with O'Connor having their big banner focusing attention on the requirements of mask wearing. And then you also see Boulder Creek here. Union Park is filming a safety video. That's what this picture is for their parents. And many of the schools did do a safety video that they provided to their parents, and just doing a really great job. So very proud of the principals and the other campus leaders and the staff with that overall. Okay, and with that, we have usually provided for you an update on our PPE, and so we will continue to do so. And tonight that will be Mr. Miglerino.
Again, President Ordway, members of the board, Dr. Finch. My note says that Ms. Mock's going to speak to this slide, but unfortunately she couldn't be with us today, so I'll have to be a substitute for her.
So you're going to do your best, Heather Mock?
I'm going to do my best to fill in her absence.
All right, that'll be great.
So thanks to the generosity of the city of Phoenix, we were fortunate to receive a bunch of Clearview face masks. These are difficult to find, especially needy in areas like for our special needs population, or areas like speech, and for our younger grade levels where, looking or seeing facial expressions and certain mouth. I don't even know what to call that. To see the lips of somebody speaking actually are beneficial in the learning experience.
The clear window mask.
Yeah, so these are the clear window masks. We were fortunate to get 7,000 of those for the adults and 12,000 of the smaller size for students donated from the city of Phoenix. So especially grateful for those folks that helped coordinate that, along with some disposable gowns that can be used in certain settings. I also wanted to let you know that the Maricopa County last week provided some updated guidance when it came to ventilation, and specifically they are strongly recommending that HEPA air purifiers be part of what we do in nurse areas. And so we are in the process of securing HEPA air purifiers for the nurse locations, especially where we would be having or students that are with symptoms be isolated. And then also part of the Maricopa County update from last week was an update on disinfecting procedures. One of the things that we learned, and it was a question I wanted to thank Dr. Zerbach for submitting on our behalf, was related to our disinfecting procedure after a positive case. And per the Maricopa County guidance, because we will be disinfecting nightly, there will be no need for us to do any additional disinfecting in an area that has already been disinfected. We will still continue to look at areas to make sure that they were properly disinfected when we have a positive case, and we have some other protocols that will continue to be followed, including the replacement of the air filter in a space where we have a positive case. So just a slight adjustment to ventilation requirements, causing the need for the acquisition of the HEPA air purifiers for the nurses and the change to our protocol for positive cases. And I think the next slide is mine, which is just a transportation update. There isn't any new information in here. This is part of our operational safety plan, but we have not specifically touched on this. I have worked with Director Missa on not only the development of this, but actually helped in or toured the facility to make sure that we're ready for Thursday, because that's the day we're going to run all the routes. Even though we're only bringing back some of the students, we don't know which students are going to elect transportation. We did ask in the survey, but that was not a binding question. And we have the protocol in place where we'll be grouping family members together. Sometimes the siblings don't like to sit next to each other on the bus, but in this case, we will be having assigned seating on the buses and limiting to 2 students per seat. That will be easier to do on Thursday and Friday. It'll get progressively more challenging as we add more grade levels back in, but we'll because we're phasing in the grade levels, it'll give us the opportunity to see how likely it is that people are even taking advantage of the transportation services that we provide, so that we can make adjustments as necessary. We will be disinfecting the buses at least twice per day, in between the AM, midday, and PM routes, and then again in the evening, so they'll be ready for the following morning. As we have stated repeatedly, masks must be worn. We have some disposable paper masks that are equipped on the buses themselves, along with hand sanitizer that has been included on the bus. That I thought was important to include because that required a change from the Department of Public Safety rules to allow us to even have the hand sanitizer on the bus, but we will have a hand sanitizer station on each of the buses. So the next slide is mine as well, and it just has to do with changes in the meal distribution. We have previously reported that due to the federal guidelines, we can go back to the summer feeding program. But as we are now pivoting to having students on campus, we are also changing how we're providing meals for our students. Obviously, with the students that return to the campuses, they will be provided their meals at their campus. And there are some varying configurations on the school as to how that feeding will happen. There's some guidance that we've provided them that all the cafeteria seating is facing one direction. Typically, we would have what we call the convertible tables facing each other. We have made that change. Thankfully, those tables that we have allow us to be able to have them in that configuration so they can all be facing one direction, so no students are opposed to each other, facing each other as they're eating. Again, this is the one area where students will not be required to wear masks because they will be eating and drinking. And we will be changing. Although we will continue to provide meals for anybody that's 18 years or younger, that will be now served at what we're calling meal hubs, and there are 5 of those locations at the bottom, so Anthem, Arrowhead, Bel Air, Constitution, and Park Meadows. And we have additional guidance on how any of those people can pick up those meals on our DVUSD.org/food website. So those meals that we're providing, we are trying to coordinate those all on one day. So we'll be providing 5 days worth of meals. That's 10 meals, a breakfast and a lunch on Thursdays as we transition. And we are making that available at those meal hub sites as we return back to in-person learning for all students. So just wanted to provide that update to the governing board.
Thank you, Mr. Miglerino. As far as our district communication for return to school safely, again, I made mention in the opening slide about the face mask parent update that we sent home on Friday, which really was just a reminder, as we have been communicating that face masks would be required throughout the entire time, although we did provide some additional clarification on items such as the neck gaiters and the valve masks, that those would not be allowed, nor bandanas. On Monday, 9/21, the parent communication went out and had some important information on first quarter grading. And we also, as I've indicated to you in the board updates, have had a weekly Spanish update on our return to school Spanish site. And we will continue those weekly parent updates, along with, as you know, the schools themselves are sending information to their parents for specific site information. As far as staff updates, we do continue with Dr. Finch's communications at the start of each week. We have our fireside chats where we continue to get several hundred folks that either join us live or watch the recording to get information directly from the 4 deputy superintendents. This past Thursday, we changed up our format and we did almost, I believe, Jenna, the entire time, 55 minutes plus of a Q&A session for the staff. So we did a live answering session of their questions. And then we also continue our administrator weekly updates. And by the way, our fireside chats, we do plan to continue through October 15th at this point. Okay, and with that, I'll give it to Dr. Galligan, Return to Learning.
President Ordway, members of the board, Dr. Finch. We look forward to the next 3 weeks with students transitioning back to either in-person learning at their schools or transitioning to DVOA and a DVOA teacher. As you know, our kindergarten and seniors start this Thursday, and then on Tuesday, after the fall break day, grades 1 through 3 and our juniors will be starting either at their schools or with their DVOA teachers. With the phased-in timeline for our students and returning to school in person and virtually, we have had to think a little bit differently about our grading and the end of the first quarter grading. Because schedule changes are taking place for students with either new teachers or shifting to DVOA, our teachers will be closing their grade books for the first quarter prior to the phase-in date. So for example, today was the day that kindergarten closed their grade books for the first quarter. That way we could transition our students' grades for the first quarter, ending now with the current teachers, and then any grades that will occur between now and October 9th, which is the end of the traditional first quarter, will simply become part of the second quarter grades. So each time our grades transition in, teachers will close their books, usually 2 days in advance, and then any of the assignments that are given, as I said before, will be put into Canvas so parents can still review assignments, lessons, and feedback from teachers. But anything that once a teacher's grade book has closed will then now go into second quarter grades. That information went out to our parents yesterday, and then we'll put an update in the parent newsletter as each new phase in occurs. So as you know, grades 1 through 3, 7, and True Middle School will close on the 25th. For grades 4, 6, True 8th, and will be October 1st. And then for our K-8 middle schools, those will close on October 9th, which is the end of the first quarter. So as I said, that'll be a bit of a change, and report cards for those grade bands will come out a bit early as well. And then what our teachers will be able to do, whether they are in person or in DVOA, is be able to discuss with parents the growth that was made from the time that we closed the first quarter grades till parent-teacher conferences. The main reason that we are having to do this is because in Power School, we are moving kids from one teacher to a different teacher, and we can't transfer grades. If we were to ask our teachers to transfer grades for every single one of their students, they would have to transfer each individual grade for each content for each student. And the workload involved in that for a teacher would be unbelievable and hard to do. So we've made this decision, which doesn't impact a whole lot, because let's say a middle school teacher or teachers continue to work with kids on assignments that were late. Similar to any other school year, we can manually adjust a quarter grade. And our teachers are aware of that. We talk to our principals about that, and that has been in place always when a quarter grade comes to an end. So that's just the main thing that I wanted you to hear. DVOA, we're going to talk in just a little bit about our DVOA enrollment and some updates there. But Gary, if you go to the next slide. We had an offshoot from the Return to Learning team, and that was our grade band teams. And Dr. Paula Chunas and Kathy White led those two teams. And so Paula is going to share information about the work that they did.
Thank you, Dr. Galligan. President Ordway, members of the board, and Dr. Finch. Over the past 2 weeks, two teams came together. Hello. Over the past 2 weeks, two teams came together almost daily to determine guidelines for unique situations when teachers would need to teach students both in person and virtually. The team consisted of 35 middle school and high school teachers and administrators and 43 K-8 teachers and administrators. We're very thankful for those teams. Our work was extensive, and we changed a lot in the 2 weeks that we worked together. We did finalize 4 situations, 4 unique scenarios in which it would be necessary for teachers to teach both in person and virtual students. So the first one comes with our phased-in timeline. Specifically, starting Thursday is a good example. We have seniors returning, and many senior classes have include freshmen, juniors, or sophomores, out of order. And in these situations, the senior teachers who are at school will continue to teach the freshmen, sophomores, and juniors who are at home. That's one example. Other examples include special areas, reading and math interventions, special education, gifted, but it is a short timeline. It is only during the phase-in from September 21st to October 7th. Special education is another example. We need to service the minutes of our students who are on IEPs. So in the event that a student is quarantined on an IEP for an extended period of time and they are able to complete classwork, we would continue to provide services. If they call in absent during that time, then they would be absent. And just like any other time, we would not provide services for an absent student asynchronous, right? We'd still provide work, but synchronous learning would occur when they're well enough. Additionally, we know that we will have students, possibly, we may have students who are required to be quarantined due to our safety guidelines for 10 to 14 days. Either for contact tracing or COVID-like symptoms. And if these students are on IEPs, we will continue to provide services to them as well during this time. The next reason, there are 2 more, is high school. So we talked a lot about high school over the last few board meetings, and I'd like to thank our principals and our teachers and our counselors for the conversations in which we engaged to really talk through how to best meet the needs of our high school students. We have adjusted over the last few weeks. And so there are many circumstances in which our high school teachers will be teaching students in person and at home. Some of them are students who had already chosen to be in DVULP full-time, but they were in courses that are not offered through DVULP, such as AP, dual enrollment, band, signature courses. And then in addition, there are courses that are full through DVOLP. And so we are working with our teachers on our campuses to continue to provide those courses so that students can get their credits for the rest of the semester. So that is, that's another case. And then the last one is middle school. We do have students in middle school who are also enrolled in credit-bearing classes such as algebra, geometry, Spanish. And so those teachers will be teaching some students in person and some at home. Although I do believe we hired a Spanish teacher today for DVOA, so that might be going away. Jenna might nod her head. And then finally, our band and choir teachers in 7th and 8th grade all requested to keep their teachers or their students who are in DVOA, so we thank them as well. So they will all be teaching students both in person and online, and we appreciate that because that is not a course or a program that we currently offer through DVOA, and we know it's very important to many families and students. And then finally, this is something that we changed. Initially, we were thinking about having teachers teach synchronously for both in person and at home when students were on extended absences. It got a little messy when we considered who those students would be, how long the absences would be for. And so we know that there may be cases where students are required to stay home due to COVID. And so teachers and schools may choose to teach synchronously, but it is an option and it is up to the school and the teachers. We know that there are many teachers who would like to continue to teach their students at home in these cases, and that is absolutely okay, but it is an option at this time. Thank you.
So our DVOA enrollment actually, as of this afternoon, is up to 3,408 students, which is still about 16% of our K-8 population. And that's with about 95% of the students confirmed in K-6, K-8, and middle school campuses of those families that had not completed the parent selection form as of the due date, which was September 14th. Some updates specific to DVOA is through the phase-in time frame of kindergarten, then 1 through 3, and 7th grade, and 4, 6, and 8th grade, and then our middle schools from K-8. We made the decision due to staffing for our K-6 specials to begin for DVOA when the second quarter starts on October 14th. Our Welcome to DVOA nights actually begin tomorrow with our kindergarten, and our DVOA kindergarten parents will meet those kindergarten teachers that are going to be part of their children's education for the next 2 or 3 quarters. Another thing to note is that our students on IEPs will mostly receive their services from their home school service coordinators and staff. That is still being worked on pretty quickly, but that's just something to note is that as Paula mentioned, for some of our teachers who are working with remote students and in person, that may be the case for students on IEPs. Our English language learner students, not up there, but they will have services provided to them as well. For the most part, potentially with a DVOA teacher, but that could also be a EL specialist from a brick and mortar, and that is also being worked on. And then last are our gifted learners. For our K-6 students who are identified gifted, we will have cluster classrooms like we do in our brick and mortar schools. We'll have Spark Enrichment and Walk Up to Math. And for middle school, we will have middle school advanced courses in English language arts, science, and social studies, Walk Up to Math, and then the high school courses that students may currently be in, like Algebra 1, 2, and geometry, just depending on where the student is. And that kind of goes back to what Dr. Chunas talked about for our middle schools. And that's all I have for you. Thank you.
Thank you. And before we go to Mrs. Moffett with return to work safely, I do want to just take a moment to publicly thank our curriculum APs at our high schools, especially with the component that Dr. Chunas talked about with the IB dual and the other singleton courses. It is a very challenging task that they have with that, and they have been doing their absolute best to make it work in the situations that they can make it work. And so I do appreciate their efforts for that. Jenna?
Okay, good evening, President Ordway, governing board members, and Dr. Finch. This evening, I'm going to be reviewing our staffing processes for returning to in-person learning, focusing both on DVOA and our school sites. We're going to review what opening days may look like and what we're planning for, and also an update on mask wearing guidance. So 3 primary objectives were we maintained as and are still working through the rebalancing of staffing. First, our goal is to preserve as many jobs as possible. In other words, if our employees find themselves in personal situations that are of a concern for them, we are working diligently to do our best to find a spot for them because we need our workforce. And we feel that we have been quite successful in this endeavor. We also, secondly, want to work to keep our certified employees in the same type or grade level or similar type of position as they move. And in most cases, we have been successful in doing this as well. We also are working really hard to minimize disruption and mindfully consider in-person classroom sizes. And as you can imagine, with the number of families that have chosen to go to DVOA, if we did move every single staff member, we would be moving over half of all of our employees, and I'm really speaking specifically to our certified staff. So what we are doing, and I'll get a little bit more into it as we move into the next slides, we are very careful to consider the classroom sizes by pulling a staff member, what those classroom sizes will now become, because we have had to pull a staff member to a new location. And we also are mindfully considering that specific employee, moving them to a site that is not disruptive for that employee as much as possible. And if we do not need to move this staff member, we are not moving that staff member. So we're going through multiple phases in order to be as conservative as possible. So the processes or the flow that we have been following, you'll see here. First, we, as you know, this has all happened very quickly. We just received the staff survey data and as well as the parent survey data, which then began to drive our enrollment and where our students were going to be. This didn't happen quickly, and it does take time to adjust those spreadsheets, and so we were looking at them, each location individually. Decisions when usually we have a much bigger picture than that, so we worked as quickly as possible. Secondly, as you know, we placed all of our ADA employees into positions where they're qualified for an online position due to their disability. Secondly, we did have employees who did qualify under FMLA for a disability that wasn't their own, but a disability of someone else's that they legally needed to go out on leave for because they needed to care for that person. And in most of these cases, these employees were willing to work online. And so we were able to fill many of our DVOA positions for those types of employees, and we found that to be a win-win. Again, we want to preserve our workforce and try and meet everyone's needs. So after all of those positions were filled, we then had to move into the MOU process. And so we have nearly staffed all of the DVOA positions with the exception of grades 7 and 8. We are currently working on grades 7 and 8 and should have those locked in by the end of tomorrow. We also, beginning tomorrow, are going to be looking at special areas. Special areas are more complicated. Because our staff, our brick and mortar locations have seen a reduction in enrollment, they may not need the amount of special area staffing that they have, but they may need partials. And so in a normal staffing year, it can be quite complicated to pair campuses because of master schedules when you are sharing staff members. And so now we are quickly trying to put the puzzle pieces together when these master schedules are already running rather than in development. And so we will be working on that. Campuses could be paired together in special areas, and special area teachers could be paired with DVOA, so could have some sections of brick and mortar and could also have some sections of DVOA. And then lastly, though we have many of our teams on alert, they have not yet been pulled, and we are hopeful that we will not need to pull a staff member from those teams. But should we need to, it would be because the enrollment shifts, or when we open back up, we see that there are some students that are not enrolled with us and decide to either come back or enroll with Deer Valley. And we will need to continue to monitor our enrollment like we do in a normal opening and make those adjustments. We're also anticipating around the month of end of December and opening up in January. So we've asked our families to please stay with what they've selected at this juncture for at least the remainder of the semester. If they change their minds at that point, of course, that could adjust the need for our staffing to adjust. So opening up in these next few weeks with phasing in, because of all of the adjustments I just mentioned with our staffing and our many of our students going over to the DVOA side, we will not need to cover as many areas as we thought we would have otherwise. So we were able to reduce at that grade level and didn't have a vacancy left behind. That did occur in some of our situations where we moved an employee who qualified under ADA to go to a position, DVUSD. There we go, physician. And because the enrollment dropped at that particular grade level or in that department, we did not need to backfill. Secondly, I mentioned before, we have been working very hard to find a permanent sub that will be allocated to each of our work sites or our school work sites so that this sub is on standby in an emergency coverage situation. We have 29 at this point. So 10 of our locations have not yet secured that substitute. We do have 2 of our HR employees working on this all day and are having some difficulty in finding substitutes that are willing to do that. But they will continue to work on that. Again, we've secured 29 of them. Third, HR and campuses. So we do call each campus. We will continue to do that to have conversations regarding their coverage needs. Securing substitutes into those vacancies. Again, a different type of substitute. The previous one I mentioned is one that would be permanently stationed there and flexible day to day versus one that takes a vacancy or a long-term FMLA coverage perhaps, or pregnancy leave. So we're talking to each principal about their needs. Sometimes we're able to cover those with internal adjustments. So for example, their 6th grade enrollment could be very low due to the online enrollment, and they need a 5th grade teacher because they have a vacancy in 5th grade, could be because of ADA. So they will make that adjustment by moving a 6th grade teacher into 5th grade and so on. Those are normal types of adjustments that we make every year. It's a preferred adjustment because the employee is familiar with the campus. Second, what is surplus? We will continue to look at, as I explained before, finding teachers in under-enrolled areas to cover over-enrolled areas, and then substitutes and other coverage options. And then we also have secured a deployment plan for our school sites as we open up of district-based certified staff that could be allocated for emergency coverage options. For example, if we wake up Thursday morning and find that a substitute could have called out, a teacher could have called out, that we would have someone to send that direction and cover, at least for the day, till we could come up with a longer term coverage plan. And then the last thing I'd like to share with you is that we have also updated our mask face covering requirements to be parallel with the student requirements. So we sent out a memo today notifying our staff that gaiters and valve masks, that Gary showed you in his slides as well, are not currently recommended, and so they will not be acceptable face coverings for our staff either for this period of time. And a reminder to all of our staff members that if accommodations are necessary due to a disability, they should come to Human Resources and we can look at an alternative face covering.
Okay, thank you, Jenna. And with that, we are able to field questions.
Okay, I just want to ask 2 questions and then we'll go around. Ms. Frank, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you guys pretty well. If you could just
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. My first question is, as we go back on the campuses, we used to do the breakfast in the classroom. How are we handling what we used to do as breakfast in the classroom?
Sure, President Ordway, I can answer part of that. Mr. Miglierino may want to add on. Breakfast in the classroom is an acceptable option this year for our schools. We do have a administrative guidance document that all of our principals have that has been reviewed with our principals several times. And in that, as far as doing breakfast in the classroom, again, it is an acceptable option for the schools to do. Many times, President Ordway, the reason that the folks are continuing to do that, especially this year, is it does open up additional space in the cafeteria for other students that might be in there for, say, before and after school, that are also maybe engaging in some activity, or if there is another class that's utilizing that existing space. And so that's one of the reasons. There could be others, but that is an acceptable practice that they are able to do. Mr. Miglierino, would you add anything to that?
No, I think that pretty much states it. So it is a campus-based decision in conjunction with our food and nutrition staff.
Okay, so if a campus chooses to have the breakfast in the classroom, that would mean you're in a classroom, which is a smaller area than a cafeteria. So they will be in a classroom with their masks off, eating, and then who's responsible for the cleaning and the disinfecting prior to them now learning or starting their class? How is that going to be handled?
President Ordway, the normal sanitizing that we've talked about would be what they would do. So they would not be disinfecting, because again, the disinfecting requires the dwell time, and that would not be safe with the students present there to do that. But they would be doing the disinfecting. You've heard us reference before the number 25, kind of our famous numbers, our 24, which is the disinfectant, and our 25 is the sanitizer.
So they'll eat.
That is safe, President Orley. I'm sorry to interrupt, but that is a
I
safe
interrupted you.
product for both of our students and our staff to utilize.
So they'll be in the classroom with their masks off, eating, and then they stop. And then I'm just trying to figure out how we're cleaning in between eating and starting the class, and who's doing it.
Yes, and again, the staff and the students could do that, President Ordway. And again, it is a very quick process. This is you spray it, and then there's a microfiber towel that you wipe it through, and so it's done very, very quickly in terms of this sanitization process.
Okay, so that was more than. And my next question, and then we'll go around, is since that we're closing the quarters early. And seniors go back on Thursday, we could have a DNF status report in a Friday update before the next board meeting, correct?
President Ordway, it is just K8.
Oh, that's right. You said that they, okay. So when would be the earliest we could have that, the stats for the DNF report would be?
We could potentially have it for you by October 9th for our true middle schools, and then the following week for our K8 middle school.
Okay, because there's a lot of concern for the parents. I'm sure it's all the students are too. That they've seen the grades go or down, and want to know how quickly they're going to be able to recoup it as they return to in school. So I was just interested. And now I will stop talking for a moment. Ms. Tweedy?
Okay, my first question was, so with the safe space to learn and saying they were transitioned back to their home campus, I guess I'm confused. I thought the reason we were having everyone go to school at once instead of a hybrid model was because then we didn't have to do the safe space to learn. So can you explain how now we have space at all our schools for a safe space to learn, and it's no longer a staffing issue, or like how it would have been for a hybrid? I guess I'm just totally confused here.
Sure, President Orway, Ms. Tweedy. So the students are transitioning back to the home campuses because the 6 cluster sites where the free space was occurring, they need to prepare for the students to return. And so we need to redistribute the students out to their home sites. So when they're at the individual sites, there's obviously a fewer number of students that are there. So it doesn't require the same number of classrooms that are at the 6 cluster sites, because then they need to prepare for the students to return. And our students are beginning to return this week, as you know, with our kinders and our seniors, and then a bigger group starting next week. And so those staff members will be needed to teach the students when they are on campus. And so we wouldn't be able to staff 2 separate programs.
So you're still going to offer the free space to learn, even though we're having in-person instruction every day?
We would be offering it, Ms. Tweedy, for those students that are currently in it until they start their regular phase-in date.
So when those phase-in dates start, you're not going to have the free space to learn? So I guess I'm confused.
That is correct.
Okay, that's what I thought I understood. So I wasn't understanding what you meant by you transitioned them back to your home campus. It sounded like it was still going on. So I was confused.
No, again, the reason is because the classrooms need to be prepared in the 6 cluster sites.
Okay, so then my next question, well, and I guess I'm going to just maybe piggyback on Miss Ordway's. The eating breakfast in the classroom, it just, I mean, I'm going to try to be, they're already not 6 feet apart, which is the reason to wear a mask. So now we're going to have all these students take off their mask, eat together, and then put on their mask. Why have them wear a mask at all? I mean, we just think that it's not contagious during the 30, 15 minutes they're eating. And then it would become contagious after that if they didn't have a mask on?
No, Ms. Tweedy, as we have indicated in prior meetings, that there are limitations, right, on us. And so even if they were in the cafeteria, they would be removing their masks because they need to remove them to eat. And so in the cafeteria, there are limitations as well when they are there.
It's a
And
bigger room. They can be spaced further.
It's a bigger room, and there's more students as well that are in the cafeteria.
Okay, can I get from Mr. Miglarino on the Friday update the square footage of of a typical multi-purpose room and the square footage of a typical classroom? You can just pick a campus, pick a classroom, and we'll compare those. And then the number of students per grade level and the number of students in a classroom, and we can do a ratio of square foot per person with that. I just think that's completely unsafe and inappropriate, and they could eat outside then. But I mean to put some, and if everybody here that thinks that's a good idea, I think I would like to see some pictures tweeted out of you guys all eating in the classroom with them too.
Mrs. Ordway, when it's my turn, I'd like to jump in and piggyback on Ms. Tweedy's concern. Thank
Ms.
you.
Tweedy, is it Ms. Frank's turn?
Yeah, I'll have more later.
Go ahead, Ms. Frank.
Okay, so I would just like to share my concern with the eating in the classroom. So you've talked about the students will be removing their masks and eating. I think it's probably safe to assume they'll also be talking. And you have a plan for cleaning surfaces. What is your plan for removing aerosols of 5 microns or less in diameter that stay suspended in the air and could then be inhaled? Because most scientists now are in agreement that this virus is aerosolized. And the large droplets that come from coughs and sneezes, those deposit fairly quickly because they're 10 microns or less in diameter. But the smaller aerosols from breathing and talking and singing and playing a musical instrument do not fall onto surfaces. They stay suspended in the air. And I'm going to call a spade here, and I'm sorry if people don't like it. You can't argue with the laws of physics. Those aerosols of 5 microns in diameter are going to be suspended in the air after the children have put their masks back on, and they will be inhaling that. And that's, again, those aerosols stay suspended in the air for very long periods of time. I know about this. I work for the air quality department. What is your plan? I'm not hearing that you have one, other than you're now putting air filters with HEPA filters in the nurse's office.
Ms. Frank, can Dr. Z answer that?
Yes.
Thank you, President Ordway. Ms. Frank, I will defer in just a second to Mr. Miglarino on if he wants to talk again about the ventilation that we talked about at the last board meeting. But let me just take a moment to review the food services guidance, which is from Maricopa County. And this guidance was recently released, I believe, on September the 8th. And so with the recommendations, the first bullet point talks about recommending that you decrease the number of students congregating for the meals. It talks about creating cohorts who eat together to decrease the number, excuse me, of people. And then it also talks about, in the second bullet point, to explore alternate settings such as classrooms. Mr. Miglino, do you want to add anything about the ventilation?
I will just add that as we have shared before, we have a comprehensive plan. So it's not just one aspect of the plan that we think is going to create the safe environment for our students and staff. It is a combination of all of the efforts. So we will be sanitizing throughout the day. We'll be disinfecting at night. We are purging the air inside the occupied rooms. We have air filtration as part of the plan. We'll be wearing masks. All of these things combined will create the safest environment possible. And so that continues to be the plan that we have to be able to return students to in-person learning.
Thank you, Ms. Margarito. And I would just draw the title again for Ms. Tweedy and Ms. Frank. The title of the public health document is titled Food Service Guidance for Schools. And again, I believe that was updated on September the 8th, where it talks about exploring the other settings such as classrooms.
Okay, but Dr. Zerbach, you haven't decreased the number of students eating together in a classroom because we're not doing a hybrid model. They're not going to be 6 feet apart. So that first bullet, you haven't met. And if mask wearing is the most important component, as has been stated, then you have already lost the advantage with that by having them take their masks off. They would be better off eating outside than eating in the classroom. And sanitizing tabletops after they've eaten does nothing to remove aerosols from the air that are 5 microns or less in diameter. I appreciate that you're doing a lot of things, and I do appreciate, as Mr. Miglerino said, that it's the combination of many different actions, but I'm just pointing out that there is a risk with, and I don't agree with saying it's going to be a campus-based decision, because then that makes some campuses less safe than others. I think that guidance needs to come from the top, in my opinion. And I'm done. It's some other board members' turn to speak, I'm sure. Thank you.
Sure, and Ms. Frank, one of the reasons that it is a campus decision is, again, it depends on enrollment at the school. And so some of our schools with higher enrollment, they may need to make different decisions than our schools that have a lower enrollment as far as how they approach some of these. And so that's why it's not as simple just to say this is how it is for all the schools. For some, it may make more sense than others.
We can also double check with Dr. Sonnenschein to see if what they put out was correct or if they needed to change any of that. So we can double check.
Okay, that sounds great. Ms. Reed? Mrs. Reed, I meant.
Yes, thank
Sorry.
you. Regarding air and purification, at the last board meeting, I had asked what the cost might be if we were to provide HEPA air filters for our classrooms. Was there any information that you might be able to share with us about how much those would cost us if we wanted to provide those for our staff?
President Ordway, Ms. Reed, I did not take note of that from the last meeting, so I apologize, but I do have the information because it is something that we investigated. The cost for roughly 1,800 HEPA filters, large enough to do the square footage of a typical classroom, which would be about 1,000 square feet, would be roughly $750,000. We did check with the vendor that we are acquiring the HEPA filters for the nurses area. They would not be available because we're talking about a large quantity, right? They would not be available till after November, and they wouldn't guarantee us a date unless we were to actually place an order. That was with one particular vendor. And so they were able to provide us with an order for 50 of a smaller unit that handles a smaller square footage for the nurse's office, and that's what we have ordered, and we're just awaiting delivery for those. But to answer your question directly, about $750,000 to put a HEPA filter in each classroom.
What's our average size of a classroom?
It's approximately 1,000 square feet.
1,000
Most
square
of them smaller than that. It's the specialty area classrooms that would be larger, such as science, art, band, music, some of those.
Okay. And then I know that we had gotten, or at least I had gotten, and I'm assuming that my other board members did as well, quite a few emails from our music teachers, band, choir, general music. And so I would be interested to see what that might cost to provide them with the air filter, especially if we have kids that are singing, choir and band. You know, we know that those are super spreading activities. So if you could send that to us, that would be great. And then
I'm sorry for interrupting. Band and choir, are those the two?
Yes, band, choir, and general music.
General music. Okay, thank you.
And then I'll pass to Mrs. O'Brien.
Mrs. O'Brien.
Thank you. Mr. Miglorino, can you give us an update on where we're at with staffing for facilities for maintenance at the campus level? Or maybe that should, I'm not sure if that's Mr. Miglorino or Mrs. Moffett. I apologize. Mrs. Moffett. Oh, no, pointing at him. Okay. Sorry, I thought her thumb went to herself. I apologize. I was right the first time.
President Ordway, Ms. O'Brien, at the last check, I think we have 24 vacancies of our custodial staff. And on tonight's agenda is, for the board's consideration, is a temporary staffing contract with an agency that will help us fill those vacancies. That's part of our strategy, is to be able to partner with a third party to be able to fill those positions that are vacant. We will continue to try and fill those vacancies. There is a provision in that contract that allows us to buy out a position if we're able to fill the position itself. But that is for the board's consideration on the consent agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Miglorino. And then I am very appreciative to our high school principals and staff and administration here, cabinet here, that work with our high school students in those special AP honors, all of those classes. Is there any discussion, or let me back up. What is the plan that occurs for second semester?
President Ordway, Ms. O'Brien, I would ask you for the grace of getting through our phased-in timeline and starting into the second quarter. We will be working with our high schools to see what is potentially possible, but at this point in time, we just need to get ourselves into in person right now. But we'll have information for you. My hope would be by early November.
And I am so very happy to give you the grace of time, because I am so very ecstatic that your answer is that we'll be working on it. So yes, and thank you. I double thank you for that consideration. You said something that made me want to follow up, Dr. Galligan. And I know my question was, whenever I guess we have completed phase in, could we see the numbers of maybe students that do we have an idea of how many students have those exceptions and are being able to stay on in the high school in the virtual capacity, taking those classes? When that number is more solid for you, I would love to see that number. Thank you.
President Ordway, Ms. O'Brien, absolutely. I can't guarantee anything for the second semester, but we are going to have a conversation.
and I'm appreciative that we're having the conversation. I was very clear that you're having a conversation. Thank you.
I think when they say they're having a conversation, they're already getting that plan cranked up if it can go. Can I go? Oh, that's right. I'm in charge. Anne, can you go? Yes. Okay. So just to go over the cleaning supplies for our classroom teachers, the classrooms have them at this moment in time. Dr. Zerba, can you say that out loud?
Yes, President Ordway.
Okay. Can I ask about gloves specifically?
President Ordway, I might be able to help with the gloves.
Thank you.
Gloves are, well, actually, maybe this is a more difficult question, so maybe Dr. Zurbach should take it. But
No, I'm
Wow,
fine with you
keep
answering it,
fighting
Mr.
over it, and
Magorino.
Paula
Yeah.
will answer it.
Of all the PPE right now, gloves are one of the biggest challenges I think we have in terms of availability. We do have gloves in inventory. We did have some prior to this because it was something that we stocked previously, and we are reevaluating glove usage in various settings, most specifically within our transportation staff. Because some of the guidance that came out from Maricopa County is related specifically to the various functions within our organization. And so if we no longer will use gloves for our what we call techs on the special needs buses, then we will redeploy those gloves for other areas as we await delivery on gloves. So gloves is an issue, but we're making sure that we have at least enough for the key positions, especially nurses and those that the Maricopa County, in their latest guidance, have provided specific direction that they have gloves in that particular function.
So if anyone has a glove connection, that would be a good thing. Okay, so on the return to school work teams, we have employees that are certified and classified. So they've been part of creating and putting input to these plans as the iterations come. Is that correct, Dr. Zerbeck?
Yes, that's correct.
And do you know, and maybe Jenna, you know this, have the associations themselves also been sharing the information from the meetings that you've had? So as we're building it, you send it out to employees all, to parents all. Are they sending it to their respective associations also?
President Ordway, yes, I believe that they have a different mechanism for doing it, but they do loop out communication.
So it's all the same information as you guys are all at the same meetings, right?
Yes, and additionally to that, many of these same people sit in on other communication opportunities that we have. As you know, Human Resources, I meet with now BLT and DVEA. Trevor wraps around to DVUSD on each critical issue with classified workforce. And then when we do have a return to work team meeting, each is represented. And then we also have our weekly administrative meetings. So BLT not only sends out information through their mechanisms, but we meet with all administrative staff on a weekly basis.
I also meet with BLT, DVA, and DVESPA as well.
So as we've been building it, it's kind of neat to be able to have the certified employees say, hey, we need to do this. And then the classified saying, yeah. So all the gaps are filled. It's kind of nice to have all the pieces at the table.
And I would just add, President Orway, in addition to that, I do have a weekly meeting with the BLT president to do the check-in as well.
Okay, so our COVID-19 contingency plan, do we have that on campus websites or just on the main website, the district website?
President Orway, I think is your question the plan that we submitted to the state earlier in the year as far as what would happen? That I know is on the district side. I do not know if that is on the campus sites. I would have to find out from Ms. Allred on that.
Yeah, because one of the things that keeps floating around in all different areas is that we don't have a contingency plan. So it's very important to me if that's floating around that perhaps we have not stated it clearly enough or in enough places so our parents and our staff all know that if this happens, this is the next step. So I just want to make sure that all of the hard work that is being done within the district is out there publicly so people can see it and understand it and perhaps send some, suggestions in for it. Mrs. Tweedy.
And just, if I could, President Roy, just so I'm clear, so and you're referring, when you're saying you're hearing comments from the community that if we were forced to close, President Roy, if that's what you're asking in terms of if the county said we needed to close either a building or multiple buildings?
Correct, and that's our school community. So that includes staff and the parent part of it.
Thank you.
Mrs. Tweedy?
I actually have a question for my fellow board members. I would like them to answer because I can't talk to you guys outside a meeting. So when I read the Friday update, it clearly was stating we have the 3 weeks of green. We're going to go forward with this plan. Even if we go into yellow, we're going to keep this plan going because it's hybrid, even though it didn't meet the 6 feet of distance. And we'll take guidance from the county as to what to do. And then even if we go red, we may still have this plan unless they close us. We're not going to close schools. I was extremely uncomfortable when I read that. And so the health department literally gave us a rubric that said yellow, green, yellow, red. It gave us positivity rates that we should close at. It gave us positivity rates that we should offer. And I'm not going to debate the definition of hybrid, but whatever definition of hybrid this district would like to adopt, you need to be able to fit kids 6 feet apart if we're in yellow benchmarks, according to that rubric. So if your definition of hybrid allows 6 feet, I would say you've hit a home run on that. If you didn't, then we need a new definition of hybrid. But we have to operate within the health department. And to say they're going to wait for the health department to close us is just a cop-out. Again, everyone's cop-out, handing the ball to everyone, because the health department clearly stated they're not going to close us. That's a school board decision. So the buck stops with this school board. So I want to pose this question to our school board or my fellow board members. I want the district to bring forth a plan to the school board so that we're not back where we were in August, where something ends up on the agenda because we don't agree with the decision being made. That clearly shows our guidelines for operating within green, yellow, and red. And I want us to come to some agreement. And if we can't, then the majority of the board carries it. And at least the public knows who stands where and what this district's going to do. But I was really uncomfortable with what I read, and I think we need a plan for whether we're in red, green, or yellow that we can all agree on, or at least just outvote each other if that's the case. But at least the community will know where we're headed, and so will our employees, and everyone can make decisions accordingly.
Could we go back to one of the slides where Mr. Miglerino was talking about our numbers?
And I can respond to a little bit, Ms. O'Brien, if you would like, in terms of for some context of that. But the President Woodway, Ms. Tweedy, in the board update, just to clarify again, I think that the message is that if the numbers climb, as you're referring to, into the yellow or into the red, that there would be a consultation with Maricopa County in order to identify, are there particular reasons that the county would convey to us why the numbers spiked the way that they would, or is it that it's a general spread and that there are differences between those two? So there are differences if it's spread across or if it is due to any particular blitz that might be happening in a particular region. And so that is when I believe why both Dr. Finch and myself indicated in there that there would be that consultation rather than just putting an absolute number to say if we did hit 7%, such as indicated in the rubrics for in the ADHS rubric, that rather than just closing or going immediately to reducing the number of students that would be in the building, that we would first do the consult. I don't know, Dr. Finch, if you wanted to add anything there or not, but I think that's more the
Nope.
context of the
That's
of what was
exactly-
in there.
That's exactly what I meant by it. And Dr. Sunshine has asked us to do that, to stay in constant communication with them, even at the building level. So if we get two students who are not related, we're supposed to call them and get their advice. So they want down to the building, down to the classroom, and they'll provide us with their expertise. That's what they do for a living. That's not what I do for a living. And so that's why we're using the Maricopa County disease control expert.
Well, I just wanted to add something before we go backwards, and then, or Ms. Reed, did you want to go ahead, Ms. Reed, and then I'll go in, and Ms. Tweedy, you can go.
So there is some guidance that is on the Maricopa County school dashboard website. If you scroll down to the bottom, it says what happens after reopening, and the county does give us guidance about what happens if we go yellow for 1 week, yellow for 2 weeks, red for 1 week, or red for 2 weeks. So I think it would be helpful if we were able to put that in guidance for our district and the board so that we understand and we can be ready to do those things if it's necessary to go back to being online. And then I was trying to find another page and I couldn't find it, and I apologize, but I'll continue to look for it. But President Ordway, I believe that you and I had a discussion over the summer as well about this regarding the contingency plan. And I thought that it was on the roadmap to reopen school, and I can't find it, but that there was supposed to be a contingency plan that is voted on and approved by the governing board. And so I'm trying to find that page and that verbiage. So I want to make sure that we have our bases covered with everything in case we have to pull back and do something different. And I think that's what Mrs. Tweedy is asking for also.
And yes, Ms. Reed, that is in the roadmap.
Oh, and could you repeat that?
Yes, President Ordway, Mrs. Reed made reference to the roadmap, which is the roadmap for reopening schools, and there is a component in the roadmap which asks for all the public school districts to be ready in case of emergency school
Yes.
closure, that you are able to do so.
And is that emergency closure and being able to do so, is that requiring a vote or just saying that we have the ability to go back into a virtual mode?
President Ordway, Mrs. O'Brien, yes, it would be the latter of what you said, so that you are able to do so.
If you remember the resolution that you passed,
Yes.
gave that authority to the superintendent. And that's where it's because of the timeline that would have to happen. It could happen at noon on a Friday or noon on a Tuesday, and I would close that minute under direction from Dr. Sunshine. So I don't see that happening, but if it does, that's how you set it up.
Ms. Ordway, I'd like to respond to Ms. Tweedy's comments when it's my turn. Thank you.
It can be your turn.
Okay. Would it be possible to bring up the Maricopa County School dashboard onto the big screen? I've got it up on my iPad here at home, and I just want to make sure I'm seeing the same thing that other people are seeing.
We're looking at the PowerPoint that was sent to you for the board meeting.
Oh no, I've got that up too. I have multiple devices here, but I think I would like for you guys to, if you can, put up the Maricopa County School dashboard and show Deer Valley.
Yeah, we can't
Because
do that
what
on the
I'm
big
seeing
screen.
is yellow, and the report says overall risk is moderate, and they recommend hybrid with on-site support. And I realize we have a couple of green benchmarks. So I either, if that must be what you're referring to when you say we're in the green, but unless I'm colorblind, when you look at Deer, and I don't think I am, when you look at the district as a whole, they have us at yellow. I'm not going to debate whether or not we have hybrid or not, but I do want to remind everyone that Dr. Sonnenschein did state there was scientific evidence to show that 6 feet of distance between people is effective. There was zero evidence to support 3 feet between people. So under the plan that was approved at the last board meeting, you cannot distance students 6 feet. That is all we have evidence for. So again, unless I'm colorblind, on the dashboard it says yellow and it says our overall risk is moderate. So I know Ms. Tweedy would like us to have agreement on a contingency plan. I'd like to have agreement on what green looks like and yellow looks like.
Dr. Finch?
Well, we'll go back to the Return to School Safety Board that we're looking at in the room here. We are green and have been green in all of those for many weeks. And so this is district data that we're looking at, not the county. But we are continuing to obviously work with the county and get their advice on what they recommend. We had some discussion 2 board meetings ago about the uptick, I believe, on the cases per 100,000. And then Mr. McGrilliam just shared that they dropped again this last week. And so we're looking at the trend. So we've continue to be green in all 3 areas with about a 6-week decline in the cases per 100,000.
Okay, Dr. Finch, on the report I'm looking at, we're green on 2 benchmarks. We have never been green on cases per 100,000.
Or 2 weeks of
people.
decline. That counts as green as well.
I'm
Right.
looking at it right now. It's yellow.
Right. Remember Dr. Sonnenschein commented about that. She said we will not be below 10 this year.
So
Okay, I understand. I know that
Ms. Frank, I think that Mrs. O'Brien wanted to add something to your conversation.
But you can't tell people
Or not.
it's green when it's yellow. You can say we're not considering that data point.
No, it says
and I
or.
understand if you're not, but you
So-
can't tell people it's green. We're green on all 3 metrics when we're not green on all 3 metrics.
So can
Mrs. O'Brien?
I have a question about the, and I don't realize no one from in here is from the county, but if we could get this answered from Dr. Sonnenschein or whoever would be the appropriate person. I want to know on the county website that Miss Frank is looking at and that we've all looked at too. If you do pull up DVUSD right now on the county website, it does show us in yellow. And I believed when Dr. Sonnenschein was here that she said it will continue to show yellow
Correct.
until we have less than 10 per 100,000. I realize that there is an or that goes for that cases per 100,000 that says if we have declined 2 weeks in a row, that counts as green. But my understanding is that as long as we don't meet, and I'd like this verified by her in the Friday update, and if it's not her, somebody from the county how that looks so that it can be explained, because it does cause confusion for our stakeholders, our community members. And so after we had the meeting with Dr. Sonnenschein, and the way I have looked at this data is that until we had the blip on September 10th, which cases per 100,000 went up, we had been green for several weeks prior to that based on the or definition. And then based on the information that Mrs. Reed found, 1 week of increased numbers in that does not automatically send you back to the yellow. That is also something I want verified, and please put into the Friday update. Now, we went down then again on September 17th, which puts the trend back in the right way. Can you please have in our Friday update, what does occur if we have 2 weeks of data that goes up? In that cases per 100,000.
President Ordway, and if I might add, I can read from the Maricopa County website. Where this is actually getting a little confusing is green versus yellow versus their recommendation for in-person learning. So if we were to say green, then the green is 10 cases per 100,000, 5% on the positivity, and 5% on the COVID-like illness. But their recommendation for resuming in-person learning, and I'm reading right from their site, is cases are 2 consecutive weeks with new case rates below 100 per 100,000 people. PCR test percent positivity is 2 consecutive weeks with less than 7% positivity, and COVID-like illness percentage for hospital visits is 2 consecutive weeks with percentage of hospital visits showing symptoms of COVID-like illness below 10%. So what they're saying is for us to resume in-person learning, we would need to be 2 consecutive weeks with a case rate below 100 per 100,000, which we clearly are, a positivity rate of less than 7%, which we clearly are, and COVID-like illness of less or below 10%, which we clearly are. So that is the county's recommendation for in-person learning. Where this gets confusing is the color of the Arizona Department of Health Services designation. So, and whether or not yellow equals hybrid or in-person learning, but the county clearly states that we can resume in-person learning based on the numbers that are represented from the latest available report.
Sorry. Thank you so much, Mr. Miglorino, for that clarification. And could you include that link to the information and the information in our Friday update? I think that would be very helpful. So that we could all, I think that is part of not just this discussion, but it's also, just prior to the meeting, I received a text from a teacher that looked at some data, and I got one over the weekend from a parent when we showed the big increase because they added the additional cases. And I think it's really important that we are very clear in our communication. And you guys are doing an excellent job. I'm not suggesting that we're not being clear. There's a lot of data out there and a lot of places that people are going for data. And I don't know how we make it more clear to our stakeholders what this body, what you as a cabinet are looking at when we make our decisions. Because I realize there's state numbers, and I realize that there are, city numbers and county numbers, but we are looking at our Deer Valley numbers and guidance from the county.
So Jim, the county's guidance or Gary, the county's guidance for us and the numbers are not color coded to the state's colors? I mean, somebody's using numbers and someone's using colors, and they forgot to ask each other what was going to match. Is that correct, or am I off a color?
President Ordway, that is correct. So even in the Arizona Department of Health Services, they indicated that we could open with a positivity rate of 7%, but the positivity rate would not turn green until 5%.
Okay. So who do we talk to get the county and the state to match their number and colors so it's less? No, I'm not joking. I'm not joking.
I've already tried
Because
that.
that's about 400 emails, and people are very nervous and scared because these two things don't match up.
Yep.
Even though they do kind of sort of somewhere.
And to make it worse, the governor came out with his own metrics and his own wording. Hybrid's a great example.
I don't even care about that
So
hybrid
we have
word
three
anymore.
different branches that are giving us three different metrics. We're following the county.
But what we're following, whether it's a color or not, it's the number that matters and the percent within that number, no matter what the colors are that somebody comes up with.
President Ordway, that is correct. We're looking at the numbers.
Okay, which makes me feel better because you're colorblind. Yes, Miss Tweedy.
I had two things. So I'd just like to go back to my original request, and I did hear Miss Reed and Miss Frank state that they would also like to see a plan if we go into the red or the yellow. I also want to clear something up. When we voted on the resolution for Dr. Finch, I remember me being uncomfortable with the language. I believe Miss O'Brien comfortable with the language, and it was added that if he were to use any of those authorities, the stuff would come straight to the school board, and the school board would be immediately informed, so that we would have the right to either affirm that we agreed with the decision or make another decision. And so, because I had just expressly said that this board is not going to give away our authority to the superintendent to make decisions. So definitely the way Ducey has said it, the way the health department has said it, they have clearly put the responsibility, whether you agree with it or don't agree with it, on the school board. We need to claim that responsibility, approve the plan, and nobody intended to give that power to the superintendent and for the board to get rid of their responsibility here.
I think when we had that discussion, I did have some questions. I think the importance of approving the resolution as we did is that if on Friday at noon or whatever day and time it occurs that we need to shut down and go home, certainly we need to try to bring 5 board members together to make that decision.
That's
right. But
I'm sorry.
I guess what I wanted to finish with is that were we to get into a situation, I would presume, and Dr. Finch will correct me if I'm incorrect, is that you would make a decision because it would be an emergency decision, and you would then notify us, and we would have a board meeting to further discuss any emergency situations. Correct?
That's the way I've done it for 22 years.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Well, and the purpose of the discussion prior to affirming that decision was that you know what we're thinking, where we're going collectively, and also through the way that we voted on plans. We've given you, all of you, directly through him, suggestions. We've told you what we just can't abide by, and what it, safety is first, so on and so forth, all of the things that we have. So it would not be wise for Dr. Finch to make a decision that went against all of the things that we're standing for. So I don't think that we've seceded any of our responsibility. I think, if anything, when we put our faith in the expertise and count on the expertise and then double check it and continue to get information and ask the questions, that we are absolutely carrying out what we're here for. So the plan is something that perhaps we want to view in the Friday update, and then the next time we come, we will say, hey, this is great. This is a tweak. We've given you, 2 weeks to do it. And as the time ticks, as we're looking at it, things are going to change, but some things won't. So is that what we're looking for?
Yeah, I just want the plan to present it though, so everybody can see it, all our stakeholders.
Yeah, and that's perfect, because at this point in time, we kind of know a little bit more than we did know. Of course, we don't know what we don't know yet, but I think we're at a spot where we can have a comprehensive plan that might, be good for a couple of weeks. So, who's talking? I can't.
So I have a question.
Yes, I couldn't see your mouth move.
I have a PPE question, Mr. Miglorino. Are the face shields available for our teachers that want them as an additional item for safety? I know face masks are required, but we had talked about at the meeting that Dr. Sunshine attended that she said that face shields would be an additional mitigation strategy. Are those available and ready for our teachers who will be coming back on Thursday? I see a lot of heads shaking. I'll shush.
There's 477 million.
To my knowledge, that evening, Heather ordered face shields for our staff.
She, just to be clear, she ordered additional ones. We already have had, I believe we had 1,500 ordered. Mr. Miglorino, you might recall the exact number, but I believe it was around 1,500. And then we ordered an additional, I believe, 4,000 that evening.
So staff just need to go to their principals if they want one of those?
Yes, that's correct. And many of those go through Mrs. O'Brien's Student Support Services as well, given that many of the staff members who are requesting those are teachers of students with special needs. And so they are supporting with that too.
Okay, thank you so much.
And President Ordway, Ms. O'Brien, just reading from the August 25th board meeting, we had 4,500 face shields that we ordered. And so they are stocked in our warehouse. So the schools or anybody that's interested in could create what we call a non-stock, or a warehouse request to be able to have those delivered to them from our warehouse.
Thank you all. Thank you all.
Okay, I've got questions about lunch boxes, backpacks. Are we allowing lunch boxes, and are we allowing backpacks? Oh, look at you
Yes.
smile. Yes? So we have no campuses
Yes.
that are disallowing lunch boxes or backpacks.
I am not aware of that if they are.
Okay. I think that's it. Classroom teachers have their stuff. Certified employees have their stuff. We covered the subs for the people we can't hire. Oh, and just Dr. Galligan. I know that you reach out to a multitude of people when you form your work groups. And I don't remember if you said you had a formal work group for those teachers that would want to remain synchronous synchronous both in classroom and students that are home. Are you reaching out to teachers that would be interested in helping formulate some kind of a plan for that?
President Ordway, that is the work over the past 2 weeks that Dr. Tunis and Kathy White worked on with 2 different grade bands of teachers, K-8 and middle school, high school. And what Dr. Tunis shared with you was the recommendations and the plan that we put forward to our administrators. We've created a communication that will go out to staff as well, and Paula can add to that.
President Ordway, members of the board, what I didn't include in the report were the simulations that we did over the last 2 weeks. So we had, and I'd like to thank those teachers as well. We had 2 teachers from Deer Valley High School, a teacher from Mountain Ridge High School. One of my staff did a simulation, and then we had 2 teachers from Norterra Canyon. And so we simulated these teachers teaching students in person and students virtually, or maybe adults in person and students virtually, We worked with Jeff Anderson and Kathy White to look at the technology, and we really focused on what we already have available for technology. And we came up with two pretty simple plans. One is you can simply use your laptop and Zoom. It works really well. The audio worked well. We simulated using a smart board, using a document camera. And we had some of our members attended the simulations, and then we shared clips after, and we debriefed both. For the high school, our high school teachers have access to teacher iPads, so we also simulated using two devices. So using a laptop and using an iPad, being logged into Zoom in both places, and had discussion around both methods as well. There are several teachers that feel very comfortable with the methods, but we also gave options for either live streaming and doing synchronous, like teaching a lecture and live streaming your kids in, or doing small group. And when we talk about doing synchronous instruction, it doesn't necessarily mean for the entire 2-hour block. So I think that's important. We are sending out a communication. As Dr. Galligan mentioned, this doesn't affect every teacher in our district, but for our high school staff, it does affect many of them. So again, I'd just like to say thank you. We really appreciate them for stepping up and offering this opportunity for our students.
Yeah, I just think that during and after COVID, that if we master this, then our students that are sick or our staff that can't come to work because their student is homesick, that that they won't miss the instruction. And also, if we have long-term suspended students, I know we don't really have them, but that they would not be on the campus and they'd still learn. So I think there's some best practices that's going to come out of this too. And if we work on it during a pandemic, why when it's not a pandemic, it'll just be our habit. So I'm glad that we are working on that. Anybody else have any more questions? Mrs. Reed?
I have a few, so I'll make them really quick. Is it possible on our Friday update to get the class sizes for our kindergartners and our high schoolers, so we know about how many are in the brick and mortar classrooms?
President Ordway, Ms. Reed, you're looking for the classroom sizes across each of our K6, K8 campuses, and then classroom sizes across senior?
So we have our kindergartners and our seniors that are Thursday. So I'm just curious to how many students we have in classes right now.
Yes, I can tell you that running a report for kindergarten can be done by Friday. Hopefully, as well, the high school ones. We rely on IS&T to produce those types of reports. So we will, for our high schools, we will work to have that for you by Friday.
If you can't have it by this Friday, the next Friday update would be fine. Thank you. And then, Dr. Galligan, I wanted to just clarify, make sure I didn't miss it or misunderstand. For our middle schoolers that are in advanced classes that are not offered on DVOA, they are still able to take their advanced classes and their high school classes, correct?
President Ordway, Ms. Reed, if a student is currently, let's say, at Desert Sky in an advanced science class, we will have a section of advanced science. The teacher will do what we do on our brick and mortar, and that is differentiate the course content.
Okay.
So that would be true. And then for our DVOA middle school students who are in a math class that is high school, we will be working with them to make sure that they are placed in the math course that they're currently in.
So who would then be handling their schedule? DVOA would be handling their schedule even though they are taking the majority of their class load at, let's say, Desert Sky. Is that correct?
They would not be taking the majority of their course load. The majority of their course load will be through
Okay.
So the only course that at this point in time, if we had a student who was in Algebra 1-2 course, that course would be still with their brick and mortar teacher until we have a math teacher that we might be able to move over. But right now we do not, and that is why they'll maintain with their brick and mortar teacher. We do now have a Spanish teacher that will be part of DVOA, so we'll be able to shift any of our middle school students who had Spanish 1-2 to that particular teacher, and they will not be connected to their brick and mortar teacher.
Okay. thank you. And then Mr. Miglerino, in regarding to the new disinfecting procedures after the positive case, um, the requirements, state that the room still needs to be aired out for 24 hours. We're still planning on following that, even though we are not disinfecting that evening, correct?
President Orway, Ms. Reed, yes, we can mechanically, through our mechanical systems, we can purge the air in the classroom. So we will be doing that before each morning, and we can do that remotely. So that can be done if an instance was found out to be during the day.
Okay, so the air would be purged. So we find out that there's a positive case at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. The air would be purged and kids would be allowed to be back in that class the following day at 8 a.m. or it would still be aired out for 24 hours after the air is purged.
We could actually purge the air in a matter of time. It depends on what classroom we are talking about and the unit applying it. But we could probably purge the air in less than an hour in most cases. It would take, I would say, if we were on site and wanted to disinfect the space right then and there, we could disinfect in about 15 minutes using our electrostatic process, and then 10-minute dwell time. And so we could actually put occupants back in that room in about an hour and a half, an hour and 45 minutes.
Okay, thank you.
But again, Ms. Reed, I would, in terms of that example is probably the one that would less frequently occur. It would more be because in the situation that was just described, that is when a student would be on campus that particular day, and also perhaps be tested on that same day. So that would have to be one of the rapid tests that we would find out, say at the 1 p.m. What is the more frequent scenario is that the student would be there the prior day, and then we would find out that the student was ill, did not come that day, and then receive their test, say, let's use your time at say 1 p.m. and we found out. And again, in that case, the room would already have met the county's guidelines for disinfection because the air was already purged and disinfected according to the regular nightly disinfection routines.
Okay, thank you. And then one last question. Kids moving versus teachers moving in classrooms that are, sorry, my brain's turned off now. Thank you, departmentalized. I know that originally we were going to have students stay in the classroom and teachers were going to move. Has that changed?
President Orway, Mr. Reed, that really depends on the campus. And so their campus had their guidelines as far as working to make sure that could happen where it made sense. And if it didn't make sense, then there was some flexibility for that. And so it depends on the campus for that particular point.
Okay, thank you. I'm done with all my questions, Mrs. Orway.
Pardon me?
I have an enrollment question.
You have an enrollment question. Would you like to ask that now, Mrs. O'Brien?
I would if I could.
Please do.
The students who, on the survey that you guys provided for Deer Valley Online Academy, so those students are now enrolled in DVOA. Does that mean they are no longer counted in their homeschool accounts, like for a campus, for Stetson Hills, for Sonoran Foothills, correct?
President Ordway, Ms. O'Brien, that is correct.
If a
And that is as they phase in. So right now we are working tonight actually, our kindergarten students will be removed from their brick and mortar campus and moved into DVOA. Tomorrow, our brick and mortar campuses will be able to look in Power School to see which kindergarten students remain with them, as will Ms. Shelley Schubert, principal at DVOA. She'll be able to look into Power School to see specifically which of the students have been moved over to DVOA.
But our junior high or high school kids who may be remaining virtual but staying with their brick and mortar teachers, those students still count with their brick and mortar school, correct? And teachers?
President Ordway, Ms. O'Brien, that is something that we are are working through right now. And if you'll, again, just give us the grace of time, we should have more information either for the Friday update next week or the next board meeting.
Okay, thank you very much.
One more for you, Dr. Galligan, at least for me anyway. Do you know if there are any specific COVID parameters that are affecting dual enrollment to continue to be taught online?
President Ordway, would you mind asking that question again?
We have dual enrollment with Rio Salado or whomever we have it. Are there any specific COVID parameters that they put into place that would affect us continuing to have that online?
President Ordway, I will look into that and have that information on the Friday update.
Okay, there's that was actually my son asked me that, Mr. Senior at ASU. I don't know why there would be, Mom. They're all online anyway. But I just wanted to know if there was anything that covered that. So I see no more
Mrs.
questions.
Ordway, I had a couple of questions.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see you. You should raise your hand.
I know. I'm hidden behind my cloak of invisibility. So earlier in the evening, and I apologize I didn't write this number down, but Mrs. Reed had asked what it would cost to provide air filters for our classrooms. And I think Mr. Miglerino had an estimate. And if you could just remind me what that was.
President Ordway, Ms. Frank, I predict that air purification, portable air purification for nearly every classroom would be somewhere close to $750,000. But I also made the comment that the particular vendor that we spoke with for the portable air purification HEPA filters for the nurses station said that the systems that they would sell that would be large enough to do a classroom setting are not available and won't be available until sometime in November at the earliest.
Okay. Is there CARES Act funding or something that could be utilized for that? Because $750,000, that's less than what we used to spend on travel. So if there's some way and I realize that, again, those aren't available until November, but it's going to be a long cold and flu and COVID season. It's what everyone's predicting. So I would like to investigate or look at how we could get that provided for our classrooms. So I guess that's more of a statement than a question. My other question, and this is really, I'm hoping someone can dispel a rumor that's been reported back to me by a couple of people that the district office employees are on a rotating schedule at the district office to reduce crowding. Is that are you on a rotating schedule at the district office, or is that just a rumor that got floated around on social media?
Ms. Moffitt?
President Ordway, Ms. Frank, we are phasing our district staff back in like we're phasing the rest of the district back in. We are telling every work site, office work site, whether it be at campus or at a department, that they are to maintain social distancing practices. So they do need to work at keeping distance as often as possible. And we also have employees in our departments that qualify under ADA who likely will continue some type of rotation schedule or work from home. But again, we are phasing our district staff back in as well.
Okay, so it's not, it's for certain individuals who meet certain requirements that are allowed to work from home.
That is true.
It's not like a rotating A-B schedule for all employees. I just want to make sure I understand this correctly, because I think the rumor that was going around was that all the employees are on this sort of A-B schedule where some come in on some days and others come in on another day to reduce the crowding at the district office. Because I know you guys have a lot of people in cubicles, but what I'm hearing from you is that there are specific employees who meet certain criteria who are working from home. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yes, Ms. Frank, you are understanding that we do have district-based employees that do qualify under ADA on alternative schedules. Additionally, I think the confusion comes from the schedules that we are phasing off of. And those schedules that we were phasing off of, if you recall, all the many board meetings where you asked me, what does it look like at the district office? And we had
Right.
a very conservative schedule. And as we are phasing back in, more employees, my department included, have more and more employees coming back in. But again, I do want to point out that, and we understand that this can be confusing for our employees, or perhaps even by some just not fair, that some jobs look different than others. And the guidance that we have received is that when at all possible, we should continue to tell everyone to socially distance. And as you know, that is a very difficult thing in an educational environment because there's different guidance that we receive specifically for return to learning. So we will continue in an HR to tell everyone, when at all possible, in your work environment, your workstations need to be separated, and that you do need to look at your department. So again, at the district office and in human resources, I do need to look in my department and make sure that our seating arrangement is appropriate and that all of our staff members keep their face coverings on all day long.
Okay, thank you. You answered my question. And then my last question, or maybe it's a request for information, is I would like to know, I know that there has been a lot of discussion on we can't do a hybrid model because of the safe spaces and because of staffing. There's also been discussion on we can't ask teachers to do synchronous and asynchronous learning, which I think was originally the plan with moving all of the DVOA kids to their home schools because of the stress on the staff, and we don't want to lose staff. But I would like to know how many staff have resigned and given safety as a reason, or a concern for safety for themselves or family members as a reason. Because I think it's fair to look at that too. I mean, if we're concerned that people might quit because we're asking them to do too much, I think we also need to look at, are we losing people because they don't feel safe with the plan that the board approved?
We can get that
So
to you in a Friday
you can
update.
put that in an update, but I would
That'd be
like
fine.
that information.
And you'd be interested for all employees, correct?
Yes, for all employees, certified, classified, admin, all employees.
Okay.
And that's it for me, and thank you guys very much for answering my questions.
And next time, raise your hand twice so I can see you. Mrs. Tweedy?
I would just like to also just back up Ms. Frank's request that we purchase those filters for the $750,000. And I do agree with her, and I hadn't even thought of it in that context. Yes, there was a year we spent more than that on travel, so and the sun filters would be appropriate. So I just want to voice support for Ms. Frank's request.
Well, I would say that we need to make sure that those are available and also would give us the result that we're looking for. So somebody's going to research that.
Do we need to put this on the next agenda for discussion, perhaps?
I don't know if that would be enough time. Maybe we can send an email and get some information on a Friday update, and then we can decide if it can be an item or not. Does that sound great?
That sounds good. Thank you.
Alrighty then. Gary, did you want to go more?
Sure. And President Ordway, I'm just going to make a quick comment that I wrote it down. I assume you asked the question about the lunch boxes because you heard from someone who said that they can't do lunch boxes. So I just wrote down that in the Friday update, I can let you know if there is a campus that chose that path. But as I said, I'm not aware of that right now.
In backpacks. Okay. I'm going to say on behalf of everyone, and slap me if I'm wrong, but you can't get close to me, so I'm safe. We do appreciate you guys being agile, nimble, flexible, and living the continuous improvement. And every time we have a day that we start in Deer Valley, we are going to be monitoring and adjusting. So we appreciate the fact that you're able to do that with and for us. So with that, I think it's called, where am I? Holy cow.
Are there public comments? Do I need to read the admonishment?
Gosh, you're just so yes, go ahead, please. Thank you.
Okay. The board invites public comment on the district's business in general and on any agenda item in specific. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes. To accommodate all speakers within the 30-minute overall limit, the board president may shorten speakers' time. Vulgarity, disruptive conduct, or remarks disrespecting employees by name will not be allowed. The governing board cannot discuss or act on any items not listed on the agenda. Board members may respond to criticism, ask staff to review a matter, or request a future agenda item.
Okay, awesome. So this is from Ruth, Hurgui.
It's
Pardon
her
me?
guide.
Thank you. Okay. As a Deer Valley community member, former teacher at DVUSD, I should have known that, and a longtime DVUSD parent, I am concerned that the DVUSD board reversal of their previous decision to keep school online until the end of the first quarter was not in the best interest of the community. Waiting until the end of the first quarter allowed the district to manage flu season issues, research data from the state, colleges reopening, and implement full safety precautions, which currently are not provided. The decision has created a fearful reaction in the community and has resulted in the distrust of DVUSD. Opaque answers to employees and parents has increased anxiety. And as answers emerge, the administration and the board's judgment has been revealed to have been made without sound scientific guidelines. The district is using the criteria from 3 feet social distancing if possible. Clearly, these are not CDC guidelines, yet no one would readily explain where this recommendation came from. I believe the distance of safety was derived from a Arizona health scientist saying 3 feet is better than no feet. Hence, this is not a guideline of data-driven safe distance practices. It is possibly an incredulous expression of what is better than nothing. The cleaning spray is provided to the staff to clean desks and surfaces between class periods as a tool of protection, is a sanitizer, and the district literature reads that it kills mold, fungus, etc. With no mention of viruses, nevertheless, it was inferred that this spray is going to be supplied to offer protection from the coronavirus throughout the school day. It does not. The district has failed to be clear and to overtly be proactive in informing all staff and parents that the spray is being provided will not protect them from corona or any virus that may be left in classroom surfaces. This week, we learned that 75% of the children who died from COVID during the 6-month wave were of minority heritage. The higher risk to students at Constitution Elementary School and those families in the neighborhood should have been a risk specifically discussed and considered by the board. After 10 days in school classes at the U of A, they have 1,200 positive COVID cases, with 17% of tests being positive, 200,000 more deaths projected before January. These are the science-based issues that DVUSD needs to address. Being in a classroom with 38 students without adequate social distancing, without recommended ventilation, is at a high risk, and you've endorsed. Withholding adequate answers to fact-based questions leaves teachers feeling gaslighted. High school students are not easily able to opt into online classes and retain their semester schedule. I'm going to let myself finish. Teachers fearful about exposure at work are not assisted with positive and safe solutions by human resources. The entire process has disrespected those whom you are obligated to ensure a safe work environment. As an educational institution which teaches science, leadership must be confident in asserting to parents that this health crisis is not a hoax. Teachers are not expected to serve as babysitting solutions, and the election must not be an influence in these public health decisions. I extend my sincere appreciation to the 2 board members who voted not to resume in person so abruptly. I ask the superintendent and the board to revisit their decision in a data-driven, fact-based manner as a historic health crisis merits. All right, the next one is from where is it? Sarah, from Sarah Glover. The district's thank you, Ann. The district's plan to bring all students back to the campus is ill-conceived and irresponsible. There would seemingly be multiple approaches that would allow for some valuable in-person learning and engagement while minimizing close contact and preventing large gatherings. There is no justification for requiring all students and teachers to be on campus all day, every day. That the district either rejected or failed to consider a hybrid or other model demonstrates a troubling lack of effort, foresight, and competence. The board has left parents with no choice but to jeopardize the health of students, teachers, and their respective families or enroll in a school outside the district, especially since there is no option for high school students. Reduced enrollment and funding will be an unfortunate yet predictable result of the board's actions and more accurately, inaction. More troubling, of course, is that the current plan will almost certainly lead to the spread of illness and perhaps for some to death for devastating long-term health consequences. Other school districts around the country and the world have demonstrated wisdom, creativity, and care in adopting models that combine limited staggered on campus presence with continued online and dependent learning. I urge you to follow their example and do your part to protect the students of the community. Our next one is from Nancy Fasula. Deer Valley deserves and needs a well-defined plan for the next year, especially. Oh, no, I take it back. All right, the next one is Renee Rios. Deer Valley deserves and needs a okay, maybe it's the same one that they both heard. All right, Deer Valley deserves and needs a well-defined plan for the next year, especially in the event of a spike in cases. Stakeholders need to know what data the board will consider employees and students safe and reverting to virtual instruction. At the bare minimum, there needs to be a better plan developed for a hybrid option. High school teachers are being pulled into many directions, being asked to create virtual and in-person content, manage the cleaning between classes, be supportive of students, and manage their own family and stress during this time. Do better. The way leadership has handled the return to learning has been so disorganized and confusing for parents, students, and employees. We all deserve better. I assure you the silent majority wants the board to consider and rely on scientific data as our lives depend on it. Kelly Fisher. Governing board members, Dr. Finch, colleagues and guests. My name is Kelly Fisher. I'm a kindergarten teacher who has been a Deer Valley employee for 20 years. I am writing tonight to ask what is being done to create an exit plan if the COVID numbers rise within the district. What numbers will be used? I don't feel it is a case of if, but more likely when, and I feel it important to create a plan that ensures the safety of our students and staff, as well as the continuation of learning as seamlessly as possible. It would be best if the voices of our employees were included in the creation of this plan. Nancy Fasula. The district's plan to bring all the students back to campus was ill-conceived and irresponsible. There are seemingly multiple approaches that would allow, okay, it's the same thing as the other one, okay, that would allow valuable in-person learning while minimizing close contact and preventing large gatherings. There is no justification for requiring all students and teachers to be on campus all day. Every day, the district either rejected or failed to consider a hybrid or other model, demonstrating a lack of effort, foresight, and confidence. The board has left parents with no choice but to jeopardize the health of their students, teachers, and their respective family or enroll in the school outside the district, especially if there is no available online for the high school students. Reduced enrollment and funding will be unfortunate yet predictable, result in the board's action, or more accurately, inaction. More troubling, of course, is that the current plan will certainly lead to the spread of illness and perhaps for some to death and devastating long-term health consequences. Other school districts around the county and the world have demonstrated wisdom, creativity, and care in adopting models that combine limited staggered on campus presence with the continuing of online learning and independent learning. I urge you to follow their example and do your part to protect the students in the community. No, well, I'm trying to see because I have like page one. I don't have a page 2. Well, oh, because it's just, okay, I see. All right, so, yeah, you can take those. Ricky Hamilton, what plan is in place to protect staff and students on campus? What hard boundaries are there regarding keeping safety on campus as a priority? Should cases spike, are there plans in place to return to virtual learning or at least develop a hybrid option? If not, what condition would need to be necessary to allow a hybrid model? Additionally, I do think it's extremely important that as long as there are students and staff on campus, board meetings should be held in person. Katie Stell, the district needs a plan in place if cases rise and we need to go virtual again. Staff members should be included in determining the criteria for engaging the exit plan as well as how it will work. I don't feel safe going back to teach or sending my children back to school until that is in place. Matthew Laskin, the return to school learning plan as it stands creates an unsafe environment for students and staff. No action is being taken to limit class size or achieve social distancing. 6-foot standard. As a teacher, it is unacceptable to ask me to go into a room with 32 students. As a parent, it is unacceptable to be told my child is being put into this kind of situation. The abbreviated time frame created has led to an ineffective and incomplete procedure and protocols to ensure safety of students and staff. I demand and beg that the time frame be pushed back to the original October 14th date, if at all possible, and all protocols be put in place for closures of the school should COVID numbers climb. I also demand and beg that teachers be given options if returning to the classroom is unacceptable to them. We are not martyrs. We deserve to feel safe in our work environment. Go ahead.
This is from Melanie Pohl. Dr. French, President Ordway, members of the board, I am writing this because I am gravely concerned about our return to school next week. I'm a first grade teacher at Las Brisas Elementary School. We have just lost our 4th section and all those students are being spread out to the other 3 classrooms. This change raises our numbers to 23 and 24 students. I know that these numbers do not exceed the class limits created by the district. However, I feel that these limits should be revised in the light of COVID-19. I do not feel that I will be able to fit enough desks in my classroom, keeping students 3 feet apart. Keep in mind, it will also be imperative that all students be able to see the smart board where most of the lessons will be presented. I have heard that the district office employees will be alternating days that they work from home. They decrease their capacity so they don't have as many people there at the same time. How is it that their lives are more valuable than those of the teacher or students in light of this pandemic? Thank you for your time, Melanie Pohl.
Yeah, I found Nancy, so I'm just going to read that and then you can go.
Okay.
Nancy Fasula, I have found you. I would like to know if Deer Valley schools have disinfectant fogging machines or sprayers to sanitize classrooms every night. If not, then why not? Other school districts across the country and in Arizona, such as Creighton, have purchased them. Then they would be beneficial even after the pandemic to reduce flu outbreaks and the spread of colds and other viruses, etc. Hand, foot, mouth disease, so on and so forth. Okay, go ahead.
This is from Annie Williams. DVUSD moving forward with in-person learning without a contingency plan is a liability and unethical according to science. The vote to go back to the classrooms from the school board seems to be as if they are operating as business and ignoring the system based on human capital as an expenditure, which, to be clear, is fundamentally wrong. Ignoring the scientific evidence of how serious COVID-19 is absolutely foolhardy and a detriment to the psychological and physical safety of people who have been entrusted to serve. Accountability is what is lacking here. I am appalled at the apparent lack of concern from the district and school board for knowingly placing both staff and students in harm's way. This is dangerous. We should follow the science and err on the side of caution and safety rather than playing COVID roulette with the lives of our community. Mary Gordon. This is a new comment for the timer. I'm a 21-year veteran teacher in the district and a parent with children in other districts. I find our plan to return haphazard and an appalling disregard of science and the well-being of our community. I see classes of 30 students in under 48 hours, and I haven't been given cleaning supplies yet or practical recommendations for making simultaneous online and in-person teaching, just confirmed to us last week. Work with one of my preps. We just keep getting told to make it work. And I've been doing so, generally to the tune of 10 hours a day for a 0.8 job. So as a teacher and stakeholder, I'm asking you to make something work for all of us. We need a well-communicated plan for pulling back instruction online if cases spike. And we need transparency in reporting cases According to the county dashboards, schools should consider online when areas show a higher degree of community spread marked for 2 consecutive weeks. We need a guarantee from the board that should this happen, we will commit to following the science instead of just using the dashboard as a guideline, and that teachers will be involved in the planning. We are emotionally, mentally, and physically exhausted. More than that, we are tired of being told how extraordinary we are and being forced to make it work under circumstances so bad our colleagues are leaving in droves. I truly hope the board can do better for us and for our students.
Andrea McCall. Dear Dr. Finch, President Ordway, and fellow board members, I'm a first grade teacher at Las Brisas Elementary, and I am very concerned about the recent staffing decisions that have been made by our district administrators. On Friday of last week, we were told that one of our sections was being collapsed due to the number of students enrolling in DVOA. Today, we are looking at 2 classes of 23 and 1 class of 24 students in first grade. While in a typical year, our numbers in first grade can reach 27 and still be okay, I cannot even remotely consider that this high number would be okay when we are in a pandemic, regardless of whether our metrics are going in the right direction at this time. The main issue is that we are going to see many of these DVOA students come back when the parents feel safe, which is great, but then what? Our class sizes will be huge. Please remember that parents were anticipating a return date of October 14th, and this new date pretty much blindsided them and forced many of them to find alternatives to coming back in person. We have to have our desks 3 feet apart, which is impossible with this many students. Why was administration not taking any of this into consideration? I even know that when discussions were happening in the summer and parents and teachers were considering or were concerned with social distancing in the classroom, administration had said that they were anticipating smaller class sizes because some students would remain in the online academy. As soon as our class sizes did get smaller, they collapsed the section and we are higher than normal. I can't understand why it is acceptable to have that many students in the classroom when we need to feel safe. I am very frustrated that the district office is on a flex schedule so that their building capacity can stay low while our staffing is being reduced prematurely, which is resulting in students being moved and classrooms being overcrowded. I sincerely hope you will look at numbers and make sure some changes for the safety and peace of mind for our parents and teachers. At this point, trust and morale is at an all-time low. Everyone wants to go back to school, but we need to do it safely. Thank you for your time. Laura Nardone. I have been teaching in our students for 21 years. I've been teaching in our district for 21 years. I have spent most of these past 2 days working on social distancing arrangements in various spaces on my campus. I am coming to realize that the emphasis on social distancing when feasible truly emphasizes that when feasible. We have had a very short timeline to make this pivot back to brick and mortar learning, with minimal training on safety protocols, scarce information on combined virtual and in-person instruction, and very limited supplies. I am putting in countless hours in hopes of making this all as safe as possible for students and staff, but under these circumstances, I am seriously concerned about benchmarks and plans put in place for an exit strategy. In other words, what will we do when and if COVID breakouts occur? our COVID numbers start to rise in our community. As a parent of DVUSD students myself, I continue to get last-minute information from my own students returning to campus, again, just days ahead of their return. Many of these updates require action to make sure my own children are safe too. I am sure their teachers are putting forth their best efforts as well, but quite frankly, we are feeling underprepared in most cases. I ask you tonight to please consider a well-communicated plan that will help us determine if we need a return to virtual learning, a plan driven by scientific data. If we find ourselves with a higher degree of community spread or seeing all yellows on our dashboard, we need a return to virtual learning as we have had no true hybrid model in place. I also respectfully request that teachers are well prepared or well represented in making these decisions. I have been so grateful to my fellow staff members and admin as they are all working tirelessly for the good of students, but I can't even count how many have talked about leaving the profession in the 2 days I have been back on campus. Please look out for the safety of our students and staff by creating a thoughtful, timely plan.
And the last one is Joe McCormick. As a parent of a student in Deer Valley School District, I am disappointed. In March, we were caught off guard by the pandemic. The teachers, students, administration, and family members did a good job and the best they could in a situation with no time to plan or prepare. As events unfolded and it was evident the pandemic could affect the upcoming school year and possibly beyond, I was hopeful that with the entire summer to plan, that the district would be prepared and that we would be provided a safe environment for our students, families, teachers, and administrators. Fast forward 6 months, and what we got was a lazy, careless plan with two options: to simply stay online with classes too large for any teacher to manage, or return to in-person learning that shows a lack of regard for the safety of anyone involved. The return to learning information posted on DVUSD.org states, social distance where feasible, K6. It has been stated time and time again, one of the most important ways of limiting the transmission of COVID-19, 6 feet of social distancing cannot be provided. The most significant protection from contracting COVID-19, mask, and yet there will be students with exceptions, allowing them not to wear masks while attending in-person learning. I know any person would be a list of half measures, but I don't want to hear it if you can't start social distancing and mask for everyone involved. I also see that Dr. Sunshine continues to be referenced as the source of advising the district on this return to in-person learning. Until she is leveraging the same amount of testing, studies, and research of the CDC, then I do not want to hear her contradictory input. Superintendent Curtis Finch, and what is likely what is the most important decision you will ever make in your career, you are choosing to roll the dice. There are parents and families who spoke up that they wanted and in many cases depended on in-person learning. So rather than come up with a creative, safe, forward-thinking solution, you responded with a plan that completely neglects one of the two most important approaches to mitigating the spread of COVID-19 and offers exceptions to the second. Other districts in and outside of our state have provided hybrid options. Where is our hybrid option that allows our children safe in-person learning? I watched family members of mine, a father and son, speak to their wife and mother who was on a ventilator in an induced coma over FaceTime, not knowing if they would ever see her again. When that happens to a student, family member, teacher, or administrator in your district, are you really going to be able to honestly say that this is the very best you could have done?
All right, time to move on to consent agenda.
Okay, so consent agenda item 4, I move that the governing board approve consent agenda items 4A through 4I.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 All right. That would be 5 ayes, no nays. 5A, please.
Okay, 5A. Hang on a second. I move that the governing board accept the administration's recommendation to pre-approve the addenda as presented.
I second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, moving on to 6A preview of our first reading. Whose is that?
President Ordway. I
Yes.
bring to you a preview item of policy IHA, which has been adjusted to include Sandra Day O'Connor Civics Celebration Day on September 25th. Although this is not a legal holiday, it is a holiday that Arizona has put in statute, and our schools will follow that requirement each year. If you look at the actual policy, you will see that at the end of the policy, there are 3 paragraphs that have been added. And we would say that we would recommend that we follow ASBA's changes to policy IHA. Again, this is a preview, and it'll come back to us at the next board meeting.
Does anyone have any questions? If we have any questions, we will email them, and you can provide us with that information prior to the next board meeting. Oh, look at that. We're up to governing reports. Mrs. Frank.
I'm not going to give a long report tonight in the interest of not dragging the meeting out any longer. Just for anyone who might be wondering why I'm not there in person, I did have a family commitment tonight that required me to be attending telephonically from home, so that is the reason I am not there in person. And I think everybody knows where I stand on the reopening plan based on comments that I've made at the past 2 meetings. So that's it for my report.
Ms. Tweedy?
No report.
Ms. Reed?
Just want to wish our kindergartners and our seniors a happy first day back to in-person learning Thursday. And just thank our teachers, especially our high school teachers that are doing double. I appreciate you and what you're doing. For our kindergarten teachers, I know that there's a lot of nervous anticipation that happens with our kindergarten students and their parents coming in on the first day. And I know that you'll handle it beautifully like you always do. And I'm excited to see the first day of school pictures. Just want to also say thank you to the parents and the teachers and community members that have sent emails. I've done the best that I can to reply back to them, but I'm still home learning or doing home virtual school for 4 kids and working full time too. So I'm doing the best that I can to get back to all of you. So thank you.
Mrs. O'Brien?
So I will say ditto to what Mrs. Reed said, so I don't have to repeat all those wonderful things. And then comment that the Arizona School Boards Association had their first ever law conference virtually. It was some really great information about COVID-19 and additional items related to that. So if you weren't able to attend, that I believe that there is some access to it online.
I saw that.
Some incredible sessions and speakers, and obviously a really interesting time to be going through a law conference. And thank you to you all again, once again. I know we say it every week, but I know you're doing extraordinary things for our staff. And I do want to give a shout out to our maintenance staff as well, and all of our classified staff who are our food nutrition workers, everybody that's working diligently and extraordinarily to make sure we are prepared for our first students who are coming back in our 2020-2021 school year. So thank you.
All of that. But I have to say, we have a brand new school that's going to have brand new students tomorrow. So I think that the Toros are up for it. Get it? Up, UP? Okay, forget it. Anyway, for all those kindergartners that are coming tomorrow or Thursday, we get to teach them their new habit, we don't have to break any old habits. So that's kind of neat. So they could be the example for the other ones. Seniors, it's going to be awesome, and I hope you guys are so happy to be back on Thursday. So we have an awesome district with awesome people. We do not always agree on how to get down the road, but at the end of the road is what's best for our students. So I hope that we can continue to strive to be very respectful of each other while we work through this third wheel COVID that we just can't seem to drop.
Can I
Anyway,
give one shout out?
yes, you can do 2 shout outs.
I'm just going to do one shout out. I will. We have all, I believe, received an inordinate amount of emails since our last board meeting, and like Mrs. Reed, I am not caught up on responding to them all. But I do want to. I'm not going to name names, but there is a teacher from Mountain Ridge who.
Wow,
was-
really?
Well, I don't.
I know who it is.
Okay, I'm glad you do. He wrote an incredibly polite email, which I was so very thankful for. He disagreed with our decision, but he was so incredibly polite. And then I'm just going to say I really appreciated the sense of humor that he provided at the end of the email, his little joke. So thank you for that. Those emails are much appreciated, even when you disagree with us. Thanks.
So if anyone wants to make a motion to do some. Oh, I'm sorry, Dr. Finch, did you have a report? Did we skip you?
Kind of a
I'm sorry.
sidekick today. Well, I'll be
As long
short.
as we're not kicking you.
Yeah. I'll be short. I just did the math on a piece of paper here. I'm approaching about 450 classrooms that I visited since the beginning of the year, not counting summer. So, and the reason why I was doing it was to see the temperature of the teachers that are working on campus and the ones that I run into. And obviously there's more and more coming every day. But it's been neat to see the excitement, to see the vibe. Everybody's excited about having students and getting school started, and so it's been nice to intersect with literally hundreds of teachers and staff, and seeing that they're working hard and trying to do what's best for kids.
You didn't cut it short because I almost forgot you, did you?
That's all right.
Anybody want to make a motion?
I move to adjourn.
I move we adjourn the meeting.
Second.
Second.
Second. Echo. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And I just want to say one more thing. The reason why we have a little bit of levity here is because it has been and continues to be such a heavy responsibility that at some point in time, you've got to smile when you're at the end of the meeting. So
Yes.
that's our explanation for smiling, even though you might not be able to see it.